Welcome to the Putting Couch, episode 50. And wow, 50 episodes. We've been waiting a long time to put this one together because we wanted to make sure that we had the absolute A-plus team, and we finally did it, Ted. So I'm Jim Grundberg, along with Ted Gallina, and we've got our two core regular guests with us today. Pat O'Brien, the Director of Instruction at Lakewood Country Club in Dallas, Texas, who has also been a SeeMore guy since Payne Stewart. And those of you that are not super familiar with Pat, he's really been the guy that took what Payne Stewart had found with the SeeMore putter, brought it out to the tour, trained a couple of young golfers named Zach Johnson and Vaughn Taylor in their early days on the mini tours, how to use this wonderful built-in training aid for more consistent putting. And so Pat's been a great friend of SeeMore, is still a global ambassador. And then Dr. Bob Winters, who has also been with us since the get-go with the Putting Couch. And Dr. Bob is just a man who has studied everything that happens in our brains when we do everything. But boy, when we play golf, I think it gets more mixed up than anything. So episode 50, I just kind of pulled a topic out that I've always been very reluctant to bring up, but I think it kind of brings everything together. So the topic today for our listeners is going to be missing a 2-foot putt. How to keep from losing your mind and your golf game over missing a gimme length putt. And listeners will learn why it happens, even to the best players in the world, how to forget it and move on, and how to prepare and practice so maybe it happens less often, but it will still happen. So anyway, with that, hey, Pat and Dr. Bob, great to have you guys here. Pat, you're an expert on all things putting stroke, but certainly missing a 2-foot putt is something that everybody does, and it can't totally be the putting stroke at that point in time. Tell us about, just you've seen the best players in the world under the most incredible pressure miss them, and you've seen them probably when it doesn't mean much miss them as well. What's going on with the miss? And when I say a missed 2-footer, I'm probably including a 2.5 and a 3-footer, because I think in our minds, depending on how ticked off we are, we may just throw a number out there, but it's that short putt.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we've all missed them. I missed them. I've, and Dr. Bob could probably get into this too, but I've literally said to myself, man, I hope I don't miss this as I'm, taking it back. And of course you're going to miss it. So funny how your brain works sometimes. We see guys on tour do it. That it's, that if it's a one-off, okay, as long as it's not a chronic thing, that's when people really start to get upset. And tour players are really, really outstanding at deflection, if they miss it. So it's, it was the caddy's fault. There was,
ball mark or something like
spike mark, or maybe their putter face was wet or anything, but the fact that they just missed a 2-foot putt, and then they shake it off and they move on. So, they're really good at that. And again, so if it's chronic, that's one thing. If it's one off, then it's like a relief pitcher giving up a home run, just shake it, move on.
That's a great analogy. I mean, the best pitchers in the world come in and just get shelled every once in a while. So, I think also, Pat, I mean, the thing is, it's only 2 feet, but you still, in many cases, when you're playing real golf, I'm not talking about a 2-foot putt on your carpet in your living room, but there may be some break to it. So it's not even just the physical stuff. It's you could misread a 2-foot putt, right? I mean, on the PGA Tour, I mean, if you're above the green on a 2-foot putt, or even when we play at our local golf courses now, the greens are so good and so fast that aim and direction is still important, and you almost have less room to make up any mistakes on a 2-foot putt. So if you've read it just outside left edge and you're off by a millimeter and you hit your putt, you're going to miss it, right?
Absolutely. You get a downhill left to right 2-footer that's fast, or 2.5 or whatever. Usually if you're aware, your left shoulder is going to get a little bit tense, and then you're not going to be able to release the putter, and you're going to probably bleed it off to the right, which is maybe the worst feeling in golf.
And that's why we're talking about it on this memorable anniversary here, because I think it kind of encapsulates everything. Dr. Bob, there's other solutions that can probably help you deal with missing that 2-foot putt. Tell us about your thoughts on that.
Well, I just got back from the first round of the final stage of Korn Ferry Tour School, and I was following several of my players around, and I noticed a player in one of my players' groups. He actually stood up, and he had about a 1 foot, 1.5 foot putt, and it actually went around the hole, did the 360, and it actually careened off the hole and went further past than the original putt. He had a 3-footer coming back.
Oh,
Now, we've all experienced that.
sure.
And there's just an emotional shock. And that's really what it is. It's the emotional shock of something, of an event that you anticipated differently. And the result comes out very, very wrong. And so what happens for a lot of people, and I've always said that putting is the single most emotional stroke in golf, especially the short putt. Because why? Because you expect to make it. But the issue becomes this, is that when you step into a putt and you go through your procedure and you actually hit the ball and it misses, and you miss it poorly, or it hits the edge of the cup, what happens to you psychologically? What happens to you hormonally, emotionally? It's shock. And it's really something I call sort of PUTSD, like post-traumatic stress disorder. This becomes putting trauma stress disorder. Okay. And I put the PU instead of, the putting, instead of post, I put the PU because that's exactly what it is. It stings. All right. It really does. To miss short putts, you just never get them back. And I've talked about this for many, many years. And I think Patrick and all of you will agree with me. The reason why missing short putts, and I'm so glad we're talking about this, because for 49 episodes, we've been talking about everything you need to do to make putts, but what happens, when you miss putts. And we always know that bad thoughts stick with you a lot more strongly than even the good ones. And so when we actually hit a drive off the tee box and we miss the fairway, we always have that chance where we can actually recover. And then we can hit it up to the green. If we don't even hit it up to the green, we have a chance to get it up and down. And there's about 4 to 5 minutes in between each shot. Now, if we're on the green and the 4 of us, have a putt, and I'm 25 feet out, and everyone there is, in our group has hit, stone great shots, and you're all 3-4 feet from the hole. Now I've got my 25-footer. Now I step up there, it's my turn to putt. I actually hit it. I'm a little bit over aggressive. The ball goes 5 feet by the hole. Lo and behold, I'm still away. All right. And those are the worst, words in golf when someone says you're still away. Yeah. Right. And so I go to my putt. Now I'm still sort of reeling. I'm sort of beating myself up going, my goodness, I've left myself a tough comebacker. And I've got this 5-foot putt. Now maybe 35, 40, maybe, a minute has passed. I step up. I hit my putt, the ball doesn't go in, all right? And I go up there haphazardly because I've missed it now a foot, and I actually hit, the hole through carelessness, and boom, it, ricochets, yeah. And I tap in, I 4-putt.
Yeah.
I walk off that green. I have taken boom, boom, boom shots in less than a minute and a half. And so when we walk off the green, missing a short putt, we are shocked. And there is sort of this psychological brain fog that happens. And that's why you see people, after they miss a short putt, they take in a lot of air. It's as if they've been hit in the stomach with a gut punch. We call this the golfer's gasp. And everyone's listening to this understands that, because when you miss a putt, your body goes into an immediate meltdown shock where you take in a lot of air and you go, and it's you become instantly nauseous. And so there's a lot of different symptoms, but the reason we get so upset about missed putt is because we can never recover. We can never get it back. It is a stroke that is gone forever, and it is really devastating. And especially when you play this game for love, or you play it for money, absolutely no one is immune to the pressure and the psychological fallout of missing a short putt.
That's great. Well, Pat, I just from my own practice, I know, and I mean, gosh, I do know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I probably still don't practice the short putts, particularly, around the hole with the different left to right and the right to left as much as I should. So again, if it's something you're not practicing, then, it's not as easy as could be. And, The other thing is, unfortunately, typically when we play in our regular game with our buddies, I mean, most of those putts are given. So, and sometimes, I mean, which is probably seems like the worst possible thing is we give the guy the putt, but then he still goes up there and haphazardly putts it and misses, right? And so it's like, what did that possibly accomplish? Well, Pat, you've seen golfers every single day, and you work on their fundamentals and their strokes and their practice routines. What are some of the things you mentioned chronic? You said on the one hand, the great golfers, and I'll throw Zach Johnson out there and Tiger Woods, and they're all at some point going to miss one of those. They do an amazing job of just somehow trying to figure out that it's I know why I missed it. It was because of this or this or this excuse. You said sometimes it becomes chronic, and then it really almost becomes a barrier that is just constantly weighing in their mind. And then they just start changing putters, and they start calling different putter companies and what have you. So tell me when does it become chronic, and what are the solutions?
That's a great question. So, obviously the putt is missed before you ever take the putter back. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that people make is if they have some negative thoughts flowing through their mind, they try to ignore them and sweep them under the rug. But the damage is already done. You're already physically tense. So if you sweep it under the rug, you're probably not going to make the putt. And then, as Dr. Bob said, you're going to go into shock. And then, so the chronic was really a vicious cycle where if you miss a short putt, you get upset, and then you get maybe a little bit more tense on the next one. And then, perhaps you're going to miss that one because you're tense, and on it goes. So what I would encourage people to do, obviously, is breathe. Number one, soft eyes. So no squinting, no tightening your jaw, and just, relax and tell yourself something nice. Like, hey, I got this. If a bad thought comes in your mind, man, what if hang on a sec, let's just take a breath, relax, slow down. I got this. And then, nip it in the bud. The physical manifestation usually is putting pressure on the putter, literally either, leaning on it, trying to get your eyes over the ball, or pushing your thumbs down on it, which kind of presses on the balance point of the shaft. And then once you literally physically put pressure on the putter, I call it signing your name in the backswing, where it kind of wobbles, and then your brain freaks out and reacts, and you're going to keep missing them. And there's that vicious cycle. So nip the bud, breathe, soft eyes, tell yourself something nice, and just let it go.
What about from a practice perspective? I mean, is there, I mean, I assume that's something that people really should be practicing. And how, are there fun games? What are the best ways for you to become really comfortable with that putt, so that when you're out there, it does seem more familiar?
Yeah, that's a good point. We do give those putts generally, and then the club championship rolls around, and guys start missing them because they're not used to having to make them. But that goes back to that, as you're walking up to the ball and you're 2 feet away, like, what if oh my God, if I miss this, then I'm going to be so embarrassed. And there's that chatter, that chaos in your brain. So that's where you're going to stop it. And obviously practice your 2-footer, practice 3-footers, but just practice just being calm. Just practice calming your mind, breathing. Doesn't matter if it's a foot or 6 feet or whatever. You want to be the same on every putt that you hit.
Great point. Doc, what do you think?
Well, I think, Patrick is exactly right. And what he's talking about is something that was first created by Dr. Herbert Benson years ago, called eliciting the relaxation response. And whenever we have this mental device, when you step into a putt and you're already sort of hyper aroused, and let's talk about arousal and anxiety here for a second. When people are aroused, that means it's a neutral activation of the body system to say, hey, something's about to happen. Whether you're going to kiss someone or meet someone, good or bad, there's arousal. Now, when there's subjective apprehension and there's a feeling that I won't be able to handle this pressure, that's when arousal turns into this negative anxiety. So when Patrick says you've already missed the putt before you step in, you are already, falling victim to, doubt and, sort of misdirected focus here. So what we need to do is have a mental device that says, hey, listen, it's a 2-foot putt. If I step in, if I follow my procedure, take a nice breath like he's talking about, but also, realize that if I step in and hit this putt solid, this ball has a pretty good chance of going in. And I always loved, what Lee Trevino said. He goes, when you hit a putt solid, he goes, it has a great chance of going in. And he goes, and the more you actually, stand over a putt, the greater your chance you're going to get tight, you're going to tense, you're going to over control, over manipulate, and you'll miss that putt. And he said, and if that doesn't help, he said, well, just step in and then miss it quick. He goes, just get it over with really quick. And I thought that was pretty funny, but there's a lot of truth to that, because when you hit putts solid and you hit them with what I call a purposeful and what we call a confident stroke, the ball has a much greater chance to go in, because that ball is already in the hole, before you even realize it. And I think that's why, when you make, those, little short 1 footer, 2 footers, and they go solidly in the hole, they create this this putting momentum that we call confidence, putting confidence. But to a lot of people who have trouble putting confidence is a foreign term, because those two words don't go together, right?
Yeah.
So that's really what we have to, really practice. And you've been talking about, the gimmies and things like that. That's where, if you're getting ready to play, with, club championship, or just playing with your buddies or girlfriends, you need to really start, forcing yourself to putt them out, rather than expect someone to give it to you. Because what happens when you are on that threshold of stress, you're unable to handle that. Ooh, this is a whole new experience. And you go into sort of a little bit of what we call acute stress dysfunction.
Got it. And the fact that somebody didn't give it to you, I mean, that's probably just added another level of something to your brain.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm always looking around and, saying, who's got lockjaw here? Nobody's giving me this, so that's another condition. All right.
I think it also changes your mind on what length of putt is before that 2 footer or 3 footer. So like if it's a 35 or 45 foot putt, you're really not expecting to make that putt. So you run it by 2 or 3 feet, you're like, okay, I wasn't expecting to make that putt. But if it was a 8-foot putt, 10-foot putt straight uphill, and you just completely missed the putt, or at least you thought it was going in, you hit a good putt and it's 2 or 3 feet by, then you're thinking about that last putt going, God, I mean, I should have made that putt. I can't believe it. And you go up there, sort of like what you guys have been talking about. You're not thinking about it, and you just knock it. And then all of a sudden it just goes downhill from there even more.
Well, let me just jump right in there, and I want to get Patrick's view on this as well. But I've always said there's about 5 different ways what we talk about missing putts, what I call putting errors. So let's start with the mental. We have mental errors. And a mental error is when you step into a putt, you're not ready. You really don't have the right feel, the right line, but you go ahead and hit it anyway, or you feel rushed. Now that's a mental error. You should never hit a putt until you're absolutely ready to stroke it. Then there's physical errors. You just made a bad stroke. You hit it too hard, hit it too soft. Then we have emotional errors. And this is sort of really where it comes in. I'm scared. I'm scared of missing. I have this acute stress disruption. And really, when we start talking about focal dystonias and yips, that's what we call acute spasmodic disruption. It means, my muscles aren't working, I'm freezing. And it's the fight or flight response kicking in. But then we have sensory errors that you're talking about, Ted, meaning I just misread the putt. I didn't see it going that way. I didn't even have any idea it was going there. And those are very hard to detect. Then there's really what we call the visceral error. Now, visceral means it's emanating from the glands. It's coming, from the body. When you're stepping into a putt, and this taps into the emotional, you've seen this putt before. You've also missed this putt before. And that just sort of, has a little log jam in your memory. And that's stuck right there in that amygdala and in the hypothalamus in the brain. It's in that limbic system somewhere. And that's where, we have to do a little bit of my work to kind of go in there and get that little bugger out and remove that scar tissue, because a lot of people bring a lot of negative, scar tissue into a putt. But what we're always talking about, and I want to hear Patrick's view on this, is that every putt you see is a new putt. And it's a new putt that deserves to be made. I've always said every putt can be made, but every putt deserves to be made. That means with that, honoring that devotion and that attention to detail, because so many of my junior, college, and even my tour players, when they miss short putts, it's usually due to carelessness or what I call over routinization. They go same stroke, different day, same stroke, different day, and they get caught in this rut of taking that putt for granted, and they miss that. So that's why, when you have your mind in the right place and you're processing things correctly and you take your time, short putts really don't become that much of a problem. But it's when you bring in all these other things that really start, to interfere with the broth.
I love it, Bob. That's great information. I call it controlling the narrative. So if I had a 2-foot putt for my life, I can picture missing it. And of course I'm going to miss it. But if I can control the narrative, I can picture making it. And really, like, to me, the highest level that you can achieve when you really make putting an art is you're over the ball and you go to a place in your mind where it's not about the ball. It's not about the mechanics. It's literally, while I'm making the stroke, you are seeing in your mind's eye that ball go in. So there's no interference, and that's controlling the narrative. That's occupying your conscious mind with something productive. So that, to me, is the ultimate goal. And, to get there, that's where the breathing comes in, and the awareness and all the stuff that Dr. Bob's talking about too. Just so, you're not a prisoner of your mind. You can control the narrative. And so that's where I would start.
Wow. This is just fantastic stuff.
It's amazing how, if you just, it's something simple, they just said, if you see the ball go in, and how that, one, confidence is, but also everything else that the negative you thought you had, if you see the ball go in, that sort of like Dr. Bob says, gets rid of that little glitch in your psyche, and okay, yeah, I'm back to being freed up again.
Listen, let's turn it, when you do make a nice, 2-foot putt, and you feel great. You hear the sound. You feel like you got the best score you could have at that hole, when you go ahead and complete the job and finish that 2-footer, whether it's for a birdie or a par or a bogey. And, but a lot of things can happen over that 2-foot putt. Well, right now, I'd like to just take 1 second to remind our listeners that this is the Putting Couch podcast, the world's first podcast devoted solely to all things putting. And we're here with our 2 all-time experts in all things putting, Pat O'Brien, who's an instructor, and Dr. Bob Winters, who is a on the golf course psychology coach, and also a great golfer, and also an instructor too. And Pat also, even though he is primarily an instructor and on the stroke and full game, as you can see right now, Pat also has very, very been versed in all of the mental and emotional and psychological aspects of the whole game of golf. So if you like what you're listening to, we've got 49 episodes in the can. You can look up our Putting Couch podcasts and listen to the Pat O'Brien podcasts. You can listen to the Dr. Bob Winters podcasts. We've got podcasts in there from special guests such as Mike Hicks, who caddied for Payne Stewart during that historic win in 1999 at Pinehurst. And I think you'll love these podcasts. None of them are dated. They're all what we call evergreen, because they're talking about long-term, forever topics in golf. And this being episode 50, we wanted to put both Pat and Dr. Bob together. And it's been fantastic, guys, to listen to you both approach this topic. And it's you do have to get the ball in the hole, and that oftentimes will require something short to finish the job. And it's going to be the difference between really a golfer feeling complete and a golfer feeling like things may be off or not. You could just spend so much time working on the other parts of your game, and you get off that green if you've missed a short one, and you just feel horrible. You feel like you're giving everything away, and sometimes you feel like throwing your entire set of golf clubs in the water. So we want to make sure that you understand that there's ways that you can improve your chances on those putts.
Well, what's also is when we all discuss doing a putting podcast, just a podcast on just putting.
Yep.
And we didn't think how it would be received and so forth. It's amazing when you guys come on by yourself and the amount of listeners that we get and notes that we get from what they learned and how much information. So I know sometimes you guys don't see it or hear it, the return, but it's unbelievable. Our listeners very much enjoy listening to you guys when y'all come on and just talk about the specifics, and then just some of the smaller things you say. It makes a big deal to all of our listeners out there. So, on behalf of all our listeners, we appreciate everything, all the information that you share and all the podcasts. Our ratings are fantastic. So, we do appreciate your time and your input that you give us.
And it's 40% of the game. And we that's all we've ever focused on is, let the other 13 clubs handle the other 60% of the game. But, the golfer and their mind and their putter really account for so much in this game. So, and we love the fact that both of you are the world's really experts on this area. So, are there any other thoughts that you guys have, that we haven't covered here, just about how our listeners around the world can, heading into this, for many in the Northern Hemisphere, it's going to be the off season. So sometimes it's going to be tough to get out there and play golf in the northern states, in the northern areas of Europe and some of our other markets. So what are some of the things they can think about, and whether it's practice or whether it's thought? Practice for you, Pat, thought for you, Bob. What can our golfers be doing in the down months to make sure that next year is their best season ever for putting?
Well, I want to talk, just one little last tip for everyone that's going to get to the golf course. And then Patrick can give us some great putting drills if he wants. But, the question becomes, okay, I've got a 2-footer, on the final hole. I need this putt. It's a big putt. And the first thing I would say is a putt is a putt is a putt. You have to approach this with the same sense of purpose. I love what Patrick was saying. You control the narrative. It's what I call controlling the controllables. So when you step into that putt, you want to make sure that you see, the ball roll line, the entrance point into the cup where you want that ball to roll into. But something you can do specifically with your visual system. And I love really what Patrick's talking about, soft eyes, loosening up your jaw, not, freeing up, the shoulder muscles and all of that. I love all that. But with your eyes, you can also look at, a spot on the ball or the back of the ball, what I would call, the 3 o'clock position on the golf ball. Okay. If you're looking down at it, whether you're right-handed or left-handed. So you're looking at it. If you're left-handed, I guess it would be 9 o'clock, on a clock, 3 o'clock with the right-handed golfer. But, when I take my eyes back from that entrance point in the hole, back to the back edge, that little black spot, that's, what I want to look at. It's almost like a carpenter looking at the head of a nail and actually taking the hammer and hitting it, right there on that spot. That ensures, a solid hit. And I remember, playing many years ago with, the great one, Arnold Palmer. And he said, the key for me to making putts, especially short putts under a lot of pressure, was hitting it solid. So we can use our visual system to lock on. And we call it having a hard eye focus on the back of the ball. Because when your eyes shift from the hole to the ball, that saccadic shift frees your mind. And as soon as you bring your eyes to the back of that ball, that's when that putter head should go back, look at that spot, make, solid contact, and then, next thing you have to do is just pick your ball out of the hole. So that would be the last thing I would actually give all of our listeners on this episode.
Awesome. And again, you should make more of your 2-footers than your 3-footers, than your 4-footers, than your 5-footers. And you do have a little bit greater margin of error. So all the things you talked about, Pat, relaxing and just getting up there and hitting a confident stroke and hitting it solidly, the ball should go in. And again, you really should believe that it should go in, and it shouldn't, don't make it more than it is, because I think that's where there's issues. But Pat, what are your sort of final thoughts on that?
Well, during the off season, especially, what I would ask people to do when in my teaching, I've always strived to take opinion out of the equation. I want you to set up how your body's built, naturally relaxed, athletic. So if you were standing tall and you just sort of fell into the middle of your feet as you bend over and you clap your hands together, you're going to notice that your left arm's pretty free at that point. So the ball position is going to be a little bit further up than perhaps you're used to. You really want to cater to your lead arm. If your lead arm's free, it can rotate and release, no problem. If your posture is good, everything can swing in the correct sequence, no problem. I don't know if it was Dr. Bob or a sports psychologist once told me that, Bob was mentioning about the amygdala, the limbic system. When we get under stress, our bodies want to take us back into the fetal position to kind of protect us. So, if you get at that 2-footer and you catch yourself kind of hovering down and really getting uptight, it's probably not going to work out. So let your arms hang naturally, and then trust the physics of the putter. The putter it goes in an angle, 68 to 72 degrees, somewhere in that neighborhood. The balance point's down near the head, which means that it's a weight attached to a stick. And so it's designed to swing up and around. The face is going to rotate naturally. Then gravity is going to bring it back down. Face is going to release naturally. You don't have to think about any of that stuff. All you have to do is get into a nice athletic setup, nice and free, and let it swing. The best strokes are the ones you don't remember. So that's my advice. Just go back to the fundamentals, get on the chalk line or hardwood floor at home. Make sure your aim is good. You know what square is, how to look down your line. And then again, if it's a 2-footer, a 6-footer, or 30-footer, it doesn't matter. Yeah, they're all the same. And that's going to give you your best chance from a physical standpoint to succeed.
That is fantastic. And Pat, I guess before we wrap up, I'd point out again that Ted and I, Pat, Dr. Bob, we're also part of the SeeMore Putter Company tour team. Companies, of course, we've enjoyed tremendous success on the tour and with golfers at every level at their local clubs. And the SeeMore Putter, particularly our core product line with the straight shaft near the center design, the putter is designed to physically swing along the path that Pat just talked about, the one that's going to be the least stressful, the one that's going to be the easiest to repeat. So check it out if you haven't, to SeeMore.com. And otherwise, we love the fact that you're listening to the Putting Couch, and we're going to continue to remind you of the great episodes that are in the can that maybe you haven't listened to yet, and tell your friends. And then as we move forward, we'll continue to take on the complexities of the putting stroke. And right now, wow, we covered 30 minutes, Ted, and on missing a 2-foot putt and how to keep from losing your mind in your golf game over missing a gimme length putt. And wow, I learned a ton. Thank you so much. Pat O'Brien, Director of Instruction, Lakewood Country Club, and Dr. Bob Winters, well-known sports psychologist who focuses in on working with tour players and golfers of all levels to help make the game easier, take the stress away, and just make it more fun. So that concludes episode 50 of the Putting Couch. Thanks for listening.
We appreciate you joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you do wherever you're listening. Be sure to leave a rating and review, because that's how we get the Putting Couch podcast content in front of more people. Also, take a screenshot and share it on social media and tag us at SeeMore Putters or #Team SeeMore.